I was born and raised in a world of unwavering certainty. My name is Daniel Carter, and for most of my life, I never questioned the foundations upon which everything I knew was built. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in a devout Jewish family that held on to its traditions with pride and conviction. My father, Rabbi Jonathan Carter, was a man of deep faith, respected by the community, a leader whose words carried weight in the synagogue and at home. My mother, Sarah, was the heart of our household, ensuring that every Sabbath, every prayer, every holiday was observed with reverence. Faith wasn't something we merely practiced. It was who we were. From an early age, I was immersed in the rituals that defined our lives, reciting prayers before dawn, observing every law with precision, and honoring the traditions passed down for generations. I believed, without question, that our way was the only way, that the truth had already been given to us, perfectly wrapped in centuries of scripture and devotion. I carried that certainty with me as I grew older. It was a shield against doubt, an anchor that kept my life steady. But things began to change the moment I left the safety of my family and my community. At 18, I enlisted in the U.S. Army, driven by a sense of duty, honor, and a need to prove myself beyond the walls of our synagogue. The transition from the quiet, disciplined world of my upbringing to the chaos of military life was jarring. The rules of faith that once guided my every step felt distant in the face of the brutal reality of war. For the first time, I was surrounded by people of all backgrounds: Christians, atheists, Muslims, soldiers who had faced horrors I could never have imagined. The battlefield had a way of stripping a man down to his core, revealing who he truly was underneath the surface of tradition and belief. I saw things I wasn't prepared to see: the depths of human cruelty, the unbearable weight of loss, the cold finality of death. At night, I would lie awake in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the day's events. The prayers I had recited since childhood felt empty. The words left my lips, but they no longer reached my heart. I began to wonder, was God truly with us, or were we simply telling ourselves stories to survive the unbearable? These thoughts unsettled me, but I buried them beneath duty and routine. I told myself that faith wasn't about feeling. It was about discipline, but the cracks in my certainty had already begun to form. Then came the day that changed everything. It was supposed to be a routine patrol in the outskirts of Baghdad. Nothing out of the ordinary. We had done this 100 times before, checking for threats, securing roads, ensuring the safety of civilians. But war doesn't follow a script. One moment, I was walking beside my unit, the sun beating down on my helmet, the weight of my gear pressing into my shoulders. The next, a deafening explosion ripped through the air. The force of the blast sent me flying, my body slamming against the unforgiving ground. I felt the impact before I even registered the pain, a sharp, searing agony tearing through my chest. The world around me blurred, the shouts of my fellow soldiers becoming distant echoes. I tried to move, but my limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. A suffocating darkness crept in at the edges of my vision. I was slipping away, and then everything stopped. The battlefield, the screams, the pain, it all faded. In its place, a silence unlike anything I had ever known. I wasn't in the desert anymore. I wasn't on the ground, bleeding out. I was somewhere else. Before we continue this incredible journey, I have something special for you. In today's video, we're sending a personal message to some of our viewers who commented their name and city in our last video. If you want to be featured in our next video and hear your name in front of thousands of people, drop your name and city in the comments right now. It's your chance to have a special shout out and be part of our amazing community. And don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe to join our growing family. Let's continue this journey together. Now, let's get back to the story. I was somewhere else. The transition was so sudden, so absolute, that for a moment I couldn't comprehend what had happened. 1 second, I was lying on the battlefield, my body broken, the air thick with smoke and chaos. The next, I was standing in a place that words could never fully describe. The first thing I noticed was a light. It wasn't like the sunlight I had known my entire life, harsh, blinding, or warm. This light was alive, flowing around me like a gentle current, illuminating everything with a radiance that pulsed with a presence I couldn't explain. It wasn't just light. It was peace itself, wrapping around me, holding me in a way I had never felt before. I looked around, trying to grasp where I was. I stood in a vast, endless field that stretched beyond the horizon. The colors were unlike anything I had ever seen, brighter, deeper, almost liquid in their intensity. The air was thick with something indescribable, as if love itself had taken form and was breathing all around me. For the first time in my life, I felt weightless. Then, I became aware of something else. I wasn't alone. A figure stood before me, radiating an indescribable power. At first, I couldn't make out his features, but the moment I laid eyes on him, something inside me stirred. A memory I couldn't quite reach, a familiarity that defied all reason. He wasn't just standing there. He was seeing me, knowing me, in a way no human ever could. It was as if every wall I had built, every secret I had ever hidden, had already been laid bare before him. But there was no judgment in his gaze, only love, infinite and consuming. I should have been terrified. I wasn't. I opened my mouth to speak, but his voice reached me before my lips could move. Not with words, with something deeper, a voice that spoke inside me, as if it had been there all along, waiting for me to listen. Daniel, your time has not yet come, but you must see the truth. A sudden pull, not physical, but something more powerful, dragged my gaze away from him, and in an instant, my entire life flashed before my eyes. I saw everything, every moment, every choice, every word I had spoken, but not as I had remembered them. I saw the times I had acted with kindness, the moments I had stood for what was right. But then, I saw the other moments too, the ones I had chosen to forget, the times I had ignored a person in need, the sharp words I had spoken in anger, the moments I had judged others without mercy. I saw myself through his eyes, and it shattered me, not because he condemned me, but because he didn't. In that moment, standing before this being of unimaginable light, I realized something that shook me to my core. I had never truly known God. I had known rituals, laws, tradition, but I had not known him. And then, the vision shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't looking at my past anymore. I was looking at something else, something terrifying. I saw the world, but not as I had ever seen it before. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing something hidden beneath the surface of reality. Darkness crawled through the corners of existence, unseen but ever present, whispering into the ears of humanity. I saw leaders, celebrities, entire nations being guided by something they couldn't even see. I saw lies being sold as truth, destruction parading as progress. I saw people trapped, bound by chains they didn't even know existed. And then, I saw fire. It started as a spark but spread like an unstoppable wave, consuming everything in its path. At first, I thought it was destruction, but then I looked closer. The fire wasn't consuming. It was revealing. As it moved, it stripped away the illusions, exposing the hidden forces at work behind the scenes. People fell to their knees, blinded by the truth that had been concealed for so long. Some cried out in horror, others in relief. I turned back to the man of light, my heart pounding. "What is this?" I asked. His voice, filled with authority and sorrow, echoed inside me. "You have been blind, Daniel, but now you see." The fire continued to spread, racing across landscapes, swallowing entire cities. And then it reached something that made my blood run cold. A place I recognized, a place I never thought I would see in a vision like this. And in that moment, I understood this was only the beginning. The fire rushed forward, moving like a living thing, consuming shadows and exposing the hidden forces at work. It wasn't a fire of destruction, but of revelation, an unstoppable force that burned away lies, exposing the truth beneath. I stood frozen, watching as the flames swallowed city after city, reaching places I knew well: New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C. These were not ordinary flames. They didn't consume buildings or leave behind ash. Instead, they illuminated things that had long been hidden in darkness. People screamed, not from pain, but from the sudden and unbearable weight of truth. Some fell to their knees, eyes wide, mouths open in silent horror. Others wept, their hands stretched toward the sky as if seeking mercy. The world was waking up. I turned to the man of light, standing beside me. My voice trembled. What am I seeing? His gaze was steady, filled with both sorrow and authority. The truth that has been hidden for generations. The fire swept through halls of power, government buildings, corporate offices, places where decisions were made behind closed doors. I saw figures in suits, their faces twisted in fear as the flames revealed the unseen forces pulling their strings. Some of them collapsed, clutching their chests as if the revelation was too much to bear. Then, I saw something else. A massive stage, a grand event filled with flashing lights and deafening music. The energy in the air was electric, almost hypnotic. Thousands of people gathered, their hands raised, eyes fixated on the performers before them. But there was something wrong, deeply, disturbingly wrong. At first glance, it looked like just another award show, another grand spectacle designed to entertain. But as I looked closer, I saw the truth hiding in plain sight. The symbols, the messages woven into the performance, the gestures disguised as harmless theatrics. And then, the fire reached the stage. The performers froze. The music cut out. A silence heavier than anything I had ever known filled the air. The crowd, once hypnotized, suddenly saw what had been concealed from them all along. I saw the horror on their faces as they realized what they had been worshiping. The man of light spoke again, his voice calm but filled with power. The world does not see because it chooses blindness. But there comes a time when the veil must be lifted. The scene shifted again, and suddenly, I saw faces I recognized. Famous names, influential figures, the ones celebrated and idolized. Some of them wept as they saw the fire consuming their illusions. Others fought against it, clawing at the air, trying to escape, refusing to let go of the deception that had given them power. Then I saw one woman in particular. She stood center stage, her expression frozen in shock. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I knew she understood what was happening. She saw the truth. For a moment, I thought she would run, but instead, she did something that shook me to my core. She fell to her knees. The fire wrapped around her, but it didn't burn. Instead, it washed over her like water, stripping away everything false, leaving behind only what was real. I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I understood what this fire truly was. It was mercy, a chance, not for destruction, but for redemption. I turned to the man beside me. What do I do with this? My voice was barely above a whisper. He stepped forward, the light surrounding him intensifying. You will tell them, Daniel. You will tell them what you have seen. His words echoed inside me, vibrating through my very soul. And then everything shattered. The fire, the stage, the faces, all of it vanished in an instant, and I was falling backward through light and shadow, through silence and sound, through something far greater than I could comprehend. I hit the ground. Pain surged through my body. My chest ached. My head throbbed. The beeping of machines filled my ears. I gasped for air and realized I was back. I gasped, my lungs burning as if I had been pulled from the depths of an ocean. The room around me was spinning. White walls, beeping monitors, sterile air thick with the scent of antiseptic. I was back. The weight of my body pressed against the hospital bed. my chest aching with every shallow breath. My mind struggled to grasp reality. The battlefield was gone. The fire, the light, the man who had spoken to me. All of it felt like a dream. But I knew it wasn't. I heard a voice, a woman's. "He's awake." Footsteps rushed toward me. I turned my head, wincing at the stiffness in my neck. A nurse stood beside my bed, her face a mixture of relief and concern. She spoke, but her words blurred together. My thoughts were trapped elsewhere, still caught in the vision, still seeing the fire, the truth, the moment I had locked eyes with the woman on that stage. A doctor entered, asking me questions, checking my vitals. But I could barely respond. I wasn't the same person who had left this world. Daniel, the sound of my name cut through the fog. I turned my head and saw them, my parents. My mother, her eyes red and swollen from crying, rushed to my side, grabbing my hand as if afraid I would disappear again. My father stood behind her, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You're alive," my mother whispered, tears slipping down her face. I swallowed hard, feeling the tightness in my throat. I tried to speak, but my voice came out hoarse, weak. She stroked my hair, her touch trembling. "They said you were gone for 2 minutes. 2 whole minutes. But you came back. They called it a miracle. A miracle." The word sent a shiver through me. They had no idea. I looked at my father. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on me, searching, questioning. He had always been a man of unwavering faith, a leader in our community. But in that moment, I could see something else in his eyes. Doubt, fear. He knew. He could see it in me. I wasn't the same. "What happened to you?" he finally asked. His voice was firm, but I could hear the undercurrent of something deeper. I opened my mouth, but the words felt too big, too heavy. How could I even begin to explain? How could I tell them that I had seen something that would change everything? That I had met him? That I had been shown the truth? My mother squeezed my hand. "Daniel." I took a shaky breath. There was no turning back now. I had seen the fire. I had been sent back with a purpose. And I knew this was only the beginning. Before we continue, I have something special for you. At the end of this video, we'll reveal the names of the viewers who will receive a special shout-out today. Do you want to be featured in our next video? Want to hear your name in front of thousands of people? This is your chance. Comment your name and city below. Let us know where you're watching from, and you might be chosen next. Don't miss out. Your name could be the next one we call. And if this story is speaking to you, leave a like and subscribe to join our amazing community. Let's walk this journey together. Now, let's get back to the story. The weight of the truth pressed against my chest, heavier than the bandages wrapped around my wounds. I had seen something I couldn't ignore. I had been sent back with a purpose. But how could I explain it to those who had never seen? For the next few days, I remained in the hospital, my body recovering but my spirit restless. My mother hovered over me, tending to my every need, while my father sat in silence, watching me like a man trying to solve a puzzle. He could sense the shift in me. He knew something had changed. The first night I was alone, I reached for the Bible on my bedside table. It wasn't the same book I had grown up with. It was something new, alive, calling me. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking as I searched for something, anything, that could help me understand what had happened. My eyes landed on a passage I had read 100 times before, but had never truly seen. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. I exhaled sharply. The fire, the revelation, the world waking up. It was all here. It had been here all along. My hands clenched into fists. I had spent my whole life believing I knew God, but now I knew him. I had to tell them. I had to tell the world. The next morning, my parents arrived early. My mother smiled at me as she adjusted my pillows. My father remained quiet, The tension between us had grown thick, a battle neither of us was ready to fight. I cleared my throat, gathering every ounce of courage I had. I need to tell you both something. My father's gaze darkened. What is it? I hesitated, then took a breath. When I was gone, I saw something. My mother's brow furrowed, her smile faltering. Saw? You mean like a dream? I shook my head. No, it was more real than this. I met someone, a man of light. He showed me things that are happening in the world, things that people don't see. My father stiffened. He knew where this was going. My voice trembled, but I kept going. He told me his name, and I knew in that moment that everything I had believed before wasn't the full truth. I swallowed hard. This was a moment that would change everything. His name was Jesus. The silence was immediate and suffocating. My father's jaw clenched, his face turning pale. My mother let out a sharp breath as if I had struck her. The room felt smaller. My father rose to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. No, his voice was sharp, final. We do not say that name in this house. My heart pounded, but I saw him. His hands trembled as he pointed at me. You were deceived. No, ABA. I wasn't. My voice grew steadier, stronger. I saw him. He spoke to me. He showed me things that I never could have known. And I know without a doubt that he is real, that he is the Messiah. My mother covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. My father's hands curled into fists. You have lost your way, he said, his voice shaking. I shook my head. No, I have finally found it. His face twisted with pain. If you continue down this path, Daniel, you will no longer be welcome in our home. The words hit like a hammer, but I already knew they were coming. I looked at my mother, at her pleading eyes, at the heartbreak carved into her expression. I wanted to take it all back. I wanted to make them understand, but I couldn't, because the truth had already been spoken, and there was no turning back. I sat in silence, staring at the door my father had just walked through. His words still echoed in my mind, cold and final. You will no longer be welcome in our home. The pain hit me harder than I expected. I had always known this was a possibility, but knowing it and feeling it were two different things. My father, the man who had taught me everything I knew, who had shaped my faith, who had been my rock, had just cast me out. And my mother, her eyes had pleaded with me to stay, to take it back, to say it was all just a bad dream. But I couldn't, because it was real. And now I was alone. The days that followed were a blur. The hospital discharged me, but I had nowhere to go. My childhood home was no longer an option, and my father had made sure that everyone in our community knew about my betrayal. Friends stopped answering my calls. People I had known my entire life avoided me in the streets. For the first time, I understood what true isolation felt like. I found myself wandering the city, searching for something, direction, purpose, confirmation that I hadn't made a terrible mistake. I clung to the memory of the light, of his voice, of the fire that had burned through the world, revealing the truth beneath the illusion. But the weight of rejection was real, and it pressed against me like a crushing tide. I needed guidance. I needed someone, anyone, who had walked this path before me. Then I remembered Ethan. Ethan had been my closest friend before the army, someone who had always questioned the things we were taught, but had never spoken too loudly about it. I had lost touch with him over the years, but I knew he was still in Dallas, Texas. I didn't know if he would understand, but I had no other options. I took a bus, spending the last bit of money I had on the ticket. By the time I arrived, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the city. I stood in front of his apartment door, my heart pounding. I knocked. A few seconds later, the door cracked open, and Ethan's eyes widened in shock. "Daniel," he asked, stepping back. "What the man? I thought you were still overseas." I forced a weak smile. "It's a long story," He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Come in." I stepped inside, the warmth of the apartment a stark contrast to the cold weight in my chest. Ethan poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from me. "All right," he said. "Tell me everything." And so I did. I told him about the explosion, about waking up in the place of light, about the man who spoke to me, about the fire, about the truth I had seen. I told him about my father's rejection, my mother's heartbreak, the loneliness that had followed. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Ethan leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. "Damn," he muttered. I don't even know what to say. "Do you think I'm crazy?" I asked. He let out a dry laugh. "Honestly, a few years ago, yeah, I probably would have. But now," he shook his head. "Man, I don't know. A lot of things don't make sense anymore. The world is different. Things are changing." I exhaled slowly. I think I was sent back for a reason." Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "Then what are you going to do about it?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay silent. I had seen the truth, and now I had to share it, even if it cost me everything. Before we continue, I have a small request. We don't make money doing this. We tell these stories because we love sharing them with you. If you've been enjoying this journey, the best way you can support us is with a like and by subscribing to the channel. By subscribing, you become part of a community that believes in something greater, a place where truth matters and stories like these are meant to be told. If you want to see more, just hit that subscribe button and let's keep this journey going together. Now, let's get back to the story. I stared at the steam rising from my coffee, the weight of Ethan's question still heavy in the air. "Then what are you going to do about it?" The words echoed in my mind over and over. I had spent my entire life following a set of beliefs, convinced that I knew the truth. Then, in the blink of an eye, everything had changed. I had seen things I couldn't explain, felt a presence I could never deny. I had met him, and now I had a choice. I could stay silent, bury the truth, and try to piece together my old life. Or I could speak. I could tell people what I had seen, what I had learned, what I now knew to be true, even if it cost me everything. The first person I told was Ethan. The second person was a stranger. One night, I found myself at a small diner on the edge of the city, the kind of place that never closed, where tired workers sipped coffee at 2 a.m. and the smell of bacon and burnt toast never left the air. I was sitting at the counter when a man sat down beside me. His face was drawn, his eyes heavy with something I recognized, a soul weighed down by the world. We didn't speak at first, just 2 people drinking coffee in silence. Then he sighed, rubbing his hands together. "Life's got a way of kicking you when you're already down, huh?" I turned to him, something stirring in my chest. "Yeah," I said, "but sometimes what feels like the end is just the beginning." His eyes met mine, and for the first time in days, I felt it. That fire again. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if the world would listen, but I knew that this was why I had been sent back, to tell them. Before we end today's video, we have a special message. Linda Terrell from Dallas, Texas, and Donna from Idaho. May the light of truth continue to shine upon your life. May you walk in wisdom, strength, and faith, knowing that you are never alone. You are seen, you are loved, and this journey you are on, it has a purpose. And to everyone watching, this isn't the end. In fact, there's a video waiting for you right now that could be the revelation you need in your life today. Just click the video on your screen, and I'll see you there. Before you go, hit that like button and comment amen to receive even more blessings in your life. Your journey is just beginning. Shalom, and see you in the next one.